What's up everyone, it's Kelly and today I've got another swatch review for you. Today I'm sharing swatches of the Ella Mila 10th birthday collection, which is called Jeweled Elegance. But before we get into that, if you haven't heard of Ella Mila before, they are a drugstore nail polish brand and all of their polishes are 17 free, meaning they are free of 17 of the potentially harmful ingredients that can be found in nail polish. They are vegan, meaning they do not use any animal derived ingredients, and they're also cruelty free, meaning they do not test their products on animals. Now I do want to make a quick note before we move on. I feel like that number 17 free is pretty high, and I did find that to be a little odd, so I checked out the ingredients that they're free of, and I noticed that they did include ingredients that aren't actually found in nail polish anyway, acetone for example. And I only bring this up because I know a lot of you in the comments sometimes get a little bit nervous when you find out that a brand can be like 15 free, 17 free, 21 free, etc. Really, you don't need to worry about how free a nail polish is unless you have allergies. The one thing I would recommend is finding a nail polish that's 3 free or 5 free, but anything outside of that really is just avoiding any sort of allergens. I can do a whole video on that if anybody's curious, but I don't think you need to be concerned if you're finding a polish that's 5 free because it's still going to be free of those potentially harmful ingredients. Back to Ella Mila, we do have their Jeweled Elegance collection today, and it actually comes in a set, although you can buy the polishes individually, but this collection comes with 8 nail polishes plus a satin top coat and then a cuticle oil. So I'm going to show you swatches of everything. I'm also going to show you swatches of the polishes with the satin top coat over it, and then we can get into a little bit more about my thoughts on them, pricing, availability, all that good stuff. So roll the swatch footage. So as with all of my swatch and review videos, I am using base coat underneath all of my swatches just to protect my natural nail and prevent any stains. Today it's the Orly Bonder base coat. I'm going to go in a sort of rainbow order here, so starting with the only cream finish of the collection. This one is called Royal Ruby, and this is a beautiful cherry red cream. And as you can see, this one was super opaque. It was pretty much one coat coverage. It fully covered up that visible nail line, but I did end up doing 2 coats just to show you what that looked like, and I was really impressed with the opacity here. I thought it was super nice. The one thing I did notice about this shade is that it wasn't very self-leveling, so I was pretty careful with application, but I still noticed that it was a little bit streaky in certain areas. That can be fixed up with top coat though. Next up we have the shade Rosy Quartz, and this one is actually a metallic foil nail polish, and it's in a really beautiful slightly dusty rose pink. And this was another one where the opacity was incredible. I got fully 1 coat coverage on this one. The formula was a little bit on the thicker side, and I noticed that I had to work really fast so that it wouldn't get lumpy, so I tried to do as few coats as possible just to get this one onto my nails. And I also had to be careful with my brush strokes because it is slightly streaky, but once it was on the nail, I thought it was super gorgeous. Moving on, we have the shade Heart of Gold, and this one's actually a pretty funky one. It's a super fine flaky that almost looks like a shimmer, but they're just slightly bigger than shimmer particles, and we have this really beautiful color that head on looks like a golden yellow, but it actually is very shifty, so it shifts into this sort of orangey bronze kind of color, but then around the edges it actually sometimes looks a little bit green or pink. So I thought it was really interesting. I ended up getting full coverage in 3 coats, and it was still a little bit sheer, but it feels like a very intentional style. So I was also curious to try this one as a topper, and I thought it would be most interesting to see how it looked over black because it does feel very shifty, and I feel like when you apply something over a black base, you can kind of see the colors that it shifts into a little bit better. So once I applied it over black, it totally transformed that glitter into this almost yellowish green color, which I thought was really cool. Next we have the shade Call Me Jade, and this one is a beautiful metallic green, and it's actually an interesting color because I feel like metallic greens tend to be a little bit on the blue toned side, but this one has a distinct yellowy undertone, which I really appreciate. So it was a little bit sheer in the first coat, but I did get full coverage in 2. The formula on this one was actually really nice. It does have that sort of pearlized finish, so you have to be careful with your brush strokes, but overall I was impressed with this one. I do think it was an outlier of the collection because the rest of the formulas were not as self-leveling as this one. Then we have the shade Blue Diamond Dream, and this one is a metallic foil shade, and this one's a really beautiful sky blue color, and this was another one I just just love this color. I think it's so beautiful. Again, a little bit sheer on the first coat, but I did get full coverage in 2. And this one, I feel like the formula was easier to work with as well. And also with this type of foil finish, it's a little bit more forgiving, so you don't have to be perfect with your brush strokes, and it doesn't have to be a perfect application in order to look good. But overall, I thought this one was really cool. Next up, we have the shade Heart of the Ocean, and this one is a deep blue jelly, and it has a little silver micro glitter running throughout. And I thought this color was really gorgeous, but again, the formula was not too self-leveling, so I found that when I was applying it, it did tend to look a little bit patchy. I ended up getting full coverage in 2 coats, but I do feel like some areas were a little bit more sparse than others, and I think that's really just because it didn't level out on the nail as much as I would have liked it to, so I was a little bit disappointed in that, but again, a pretty color. Next up, we have the shade Amethyst Kiss, and this is another interesting color mix here. We've got this sort of fuchsia jelly base, and then within that base, we have a really intense blue indigo kind of shimmer. So I started off with 2 coats. I found that it was just a little bit sheer. There were some areas that looked a little bit more patchy than others. So I ended up applying a 3rd coat, and I think that really deepened up the color. It kind of transformed from being a little bit more on the fuchsia pinky side into being a more purple into blue kind of color. So I thought that was really pretty, but again, there were just some areas that looked a little bit more full coverage than others. And then we have the shade Pink Sapphire, and this one is another jelly that has a sort of iridescent shimmer within it. So this time we have this gorgeous hot pink jelly base, and within that we've got this iridescent blue purple shimmer. So it was a little bit subtle in the first 2 coats. I feel like I mostly just got that hot pink, almost reddish kind of color. And again, I just feel like it was lacking a little bit of opacity in those 2 coats. So I ended up doing a 3rd coat for full coverage, and I think that gave me a lot better of an opacity on this manicure. It definitely covered up my visible nail line, but I still feel like that blue purple shimmer was a little bit more subtle than I expected it to be. I also want to quickly show you the satin top coat that came with the collection. It's called Pearl Drops, and it's kind of sitting somewhere between being a matte finish and being a glossy finish. So it's just like a little bit of like a satiny, plasticky kind of finish. You can see with the red, it just sort of softened it up a little bit, made it a little bit less shiny. But I did notice that because most of the polishes in this collection are specialty finishes that almost give off a little bit of a matte look, it didn't really transform them too much. So originally I was going to show you all of them with the matte top coat over it, but most of them ended up looking like this, which is pretty much the same as it looked without. The birthday set also came with a cuticle oil, which I wanted to point out because I thought it was really cute. It actually has little iridescent star glitters inside the bottle, so I thought that was super cute. It doesn't seem to get onto the actual brush, so you don't have to worry about the glitters actually getting onto your skin or nails. So here are all the polishes together, and looking at them side by side, I think this is such a beautiful color story. I love these rich, intense colors, and I really love the different formulas. I thought they were interesting finishes to play around with, but overall, I did find that there was one issue that I had pretty consistently with this collection, and it's also the same experience that I had the last time I tried them, which is that Ella and Mila for me is just not very self-leveling. I find it to be a little bit difficult to apply, and I have a lot of experience in painting my nails, so I feel like this would be very difficult for people who maybe don't have as much experience. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a second, but I just wanted to show you all the colors together because even though they did have their formula issues, I really love these colors. I think they're so pretty. So yeah, those are the polishes, and I have to say, personally, I just feel like I'm not a huge fan of the Ella and Mila formula. I really love the opacity. I think the colors are super gorgeous, and I feel like these are going to be great shades to use for nail art, just because I always like working with really opaque colors when I'm doing nail art. But that being said, I just don't feel like this is a very beginner-friendly brand. I actually tried them out a few years ago on my channel, and I found back then that they were not self-leveling polishes, but at the time I blamed it on their brush because they used to have a round skinny brush. But since then, they have switched over to a slightly wider flat brush, and I still find that the polishes are not self-leveling. Now, of course, you can put top coat over these, and that's always what I recommend anyway, but if you are a beginner and you're not careful with application, you can still end up with a pretty lumpy manicure. So I really wouldn't recommend this brand for beginners. But that being said, I do think that the polishes are really gorgeous. I love the colors. I love the different finishes here. And I mentioned this in my last review, but I love their branding. I think it's so cute. I love the little elegant bottles. So I am a little conflicted on how I feel, but at the end of the day, I do think that the formula is the most important thing. And I do think that finding a self-leveling formula is really important, especially if you're just starting out. So now let's get into pricing and availability. All of these polishes come in 13.3 milliliter bottles, and they do have a medium wide flat brush. You can get the set of 8 nail polishes plus the top coat and the cuticle oil, and that retails on the Ella and Mila website for $90 USD. Otherwise, if you're buying them individually, they retail for $12.50 USD each. As far as the pricing, I do wish it was a little bit lower. I wish it was more of a drugstore price rather than a salon brand price, only because you can get salon brands that do self-level for the same price or a little bit cheaper. I feel like I would be so much more likely to recommend these if they were in like the $6 to maybe $8 or $9 range. And I know they do sell them for less at certain retailers, but I haven't seen this collection available anywhere else yet. But again, if I do see it, I will link it down in the description. But yeah, that is it for my thoughts. Sadly, a little bit disappointed in these, but I'm so curious to hear your thoughts. I would love to know what you think of this brand, what you think of this collection specifically, which color is your favorite. Have you ever tried them before? Are you planning on picking any of these up? Leave it all in the comments. We can chat about it. And if you enjoy my swatch and review videos, please hit that like button. It really helps me out. It lets me know I'm doing a good job. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, I would really appreciate if you could subscribe. I put out new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And of course, a huge shout out to my supporters on Patreon, my royal astronomer Amanda M, as well as my cosmic admirals Paola, Ken, Rosy, and Angel. I really appreciate your support, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye. Today's fun fact is actually kind of an embarrassing one, and it's about this brand, which I've known about this brand for a really long time, but I didn't review them until a few years back. But fun fact, I thought for many, many years that this brand was called Ella and Mia. And if you watch my last review on them, I actually called them Ella and Mia the whole time. Until someone in the comments was like, by the way, it's Mila, not Mia. So even in my head, I still think of them as Ella and Mia. I keep on having to like correct myself and be like, it's Ella and Mila. I don't know why I'm just not seeing the L in Mila when I look at the logo, but yeah, it's hilarious that review exists and I'm just saying the totally wrong brand name. But yeah, that's it. I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.